and welcome to today's review of the Transformers Studio Series 86 Voyager class sweep. Now, I've been meaning to do this one for a little bit, probably since before I did Cyclonus, and I'd considered kind of saving it until I got around to buying the Scourge version of this. That way I can kind of do a side-by-side and talk to you about the differences between the two, but that didn't happen. I've still not found Scourge. I think I said in my last video that I'd like to find him at TF Nation if possible. He's not urgent and I'm not willing to pay silly money for him. I'm not even willing to buy a boxed one because just boxed figures isn't how I roll. But yeah, let's just jump straight into it. So overall, Scourge is looking quite good here. Mine's got some paint chipping here on the leg, here on the shins. It's fairly thin around here. As you can see, this section here isn't painted. This section's fine, even though it's a very thin layer. Paint on the rest of the figure, you've got this kind of pink hastily applied. Here, there's splotches outside the area. Crikey, there you go. Same with this section. Terribly applied paint. The face is painted grey. As you can see, it bleeds out onto the helmet. Facial hair is painted. Eyes are painted. This little tip on his head, that's painted. A lot of the grey on this is painted, specifically if it's surrounded by a blue section. So here, back wings, hands, nails. These whole sections around the knee, the abdomen, the bits on the gauntlet. There's this whole section at the back. You know, it's all painted. These sections here, it's all just more paint. And yeah, generally the visuals on this guy, he looks fairly accurate, you know. From the back or side, he looks kind of terrible. There's nothing you can do about these bits hanging off. There's not a better way to kind of have them positioned either, so whatever. You know, can't win them all. But moving on to kind of what this guy does. He comes with a rifle, quite cool. Plug into either hand. And unlike most figures, he comes with a blast effect. Now I think this is purely because, I mean, I'm not sure the exact reasoning, but maybe they went a bit under budget, realized, oh yeah, we can actually include something else. It also plugs. Now for the robot mode size comparisons, here we have Ralph, here we have Steve, Legends class Trail Cutter, Kingdom Cyclonus, and Galvatron. Regardless of where he is in the shot, Galvatron is actually bigger. You know, it's not just him being further forward and making it look as such. As you can see, he towers over the back of him. Scourge is, I guess, closer to what a modern Voyager is. You know, he's very similar to a lot of the other figures in his price point now. Oh my god. See, everyone's falling over. Your scheduled programming shall resume shortly. And now we return to your scheduled programming. So, moving on to articulation, we have shoulders going a bit higher than usual. Can't go all the way around due to the backpack. There is no way to avoid this. There's no positioning of the backpack that will allow the arms to really go further. So that's something you've got to work with. This whole backpack assembly is like detrimental to the figure as a whole, to be honest. Elbows pull more than the 90, which, never mind. It's just the angle I had them at. They don't pull more than the 90. They're just kind of standard. Bicep goes all the way around. It's really tight on mine. All of my joints are tight on this figure, so wrists go all the way around. Nice open hand, quite cool. He's got painted nails, which is something. Legs kick up less than usual. legs, kick back, about the usual amount. Then knees, not too bad, you know, but hey, it could be better. Ankles go that much. Waist does do a full 360, as is my complaint with the joints on this figure. They're all too tight. And lastly, we have a incredibly tight thigh swivel, which does not go all the way around. And we have a head that struggles to get side to side due to how tight it is. Doesn't move up, doesn't move down. Yeah, nothing to say besides the fact I think the articulation on this is not good. But anyway, you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again. You don't buy Transformers for articulation necessary. You don't buy Transformers for articulation necessarily. You buy them for the experience of having something that goes from one thing to another. So now we're moving on to the transformation. Just a little cutting about this. The QC on mine's terrible. This groove section isn't actually cut out fully, and I've never been able to fix the problem since it's just a massive chunk of plastic that needs removing. So one of the arms on mine doesn't tab in. Hasbro QC strikes again. So now for the vehicle mode, we have a lovely blue spacecraft, I've got to say. Just like the robot mode, this looks the part. It's pretty much exactly what the Sweeps and Scourge turned into. He's decked out in this nice kind of grey with the purple tint. It's somewhat pearlescent, you know. Nice blues. You go, everything underneath. Now, if I was to critique this, it is the fact that it's just a robot kind of encased in a shell. But oh well, can't do much about it. Other than that, I think this is quite good, you know. All the detailing is nicely done. Nothing I can really complain about. And yeah, so let's just cover a little size comparison and the blast effect accessory. Now, like the gun pegs onto here, right? Now it can also peg onto this part of the vehicle mode, so he can kind of shoot while he flies around, which is quite cool. You know, I'm quite happy with that inclusion. It's kind of accurate to what they did in the movies, as they could shoot from there, so it's a nice inclusion. And for size comparison, we have Steve, Ralph, Joker, and just because he's on hand and I've been playing around with him recently, Legacy United chase. There you go. Beautiful little comparison. Now, much like Cyclonus from the last review, I'm not too fussed about comparing my aerial vehicles to cars and whatnot, because I'm not too bothered about the scale between them. I'm also interested how the planes and things scale together. Now, I don't have anything on hand at the moment, and I just can't be asked to transform Cyclonus. So we'll get to that sort of comparison eventually. Once I review my Takara Legends Galvatron, we'll do a comparison between him, Scourge, the Sweep, and Cyclonus, and then we'll get a good look at how they all go together, because Takara Legends Galvatron, the intended vehicle mode, is supposed to be a spacecraft, whereas the vehicle mode everyone's kind of accepted that you can also make is the cannon mode, but we'll get to it. Anyway, so now we're going to be moving on to my final thoughts. And so, for my final thoughts of the Studio Series 86 Sweep, and this is probably going to be the same for Scourge once I have him and review him. He's overall fine, you know. He's one of the coolest looking bot modes I've ever seen, you know. It's brilliant, and then you kind of just remember the giant backpack. You go, you know, it holds him back a bit, and then you remember that the spaceship mode looks pretty damn cool, and you kind of start to forgive it a little bit. So that's going to bring me around to the aesthetics on this guy. Now, mine's got dodgy paint applications, which really don't help, and this back section is a pain in the ass from this side, and you know, side view, back view. It does kind of affect his stability, but whatever. You know, if we take all that into account, I'm definitely giving him a 4 out of 5 on aesthetics, because the robot mode is just brilliant, you know. The sweeps and Scourge, excellent designs. I'm just not quite a fan of how this backpack hinders everything, and the fact my paint is terrible, you know, and I can't do an awful lot about it, so whatever. But 4 out of 5 on the aesthetics. Now for the transformation, I'm definitely just going to give him a 3. It's nothing offensive. The process isn't too difficult to do. I'm just a bit bothered by the fact it's a guy in a shell, you know. I've seen things like the Fans Toys Scourge mold, which is a third-party masterpiece, if you didn't know. You know, it's this a lot bigger, and it kind of does the backpack thing a bit better. But, I mean, quintessentially, the Scourge and Sweep design doesn't allow itself to be too sleek in the robot mode. Even the G1 toy, it's a bit dated or whatever, but that's a bit of a shell former. The Titan's Return figure, which I sadly don't own, seems to be a bit of a shell former. And the Generation/United Scourge mold is a completely different alt mode, and as a result doesn't suffer from this. So maybe it's just an issue with the alt mode for G1 Scourge, you know. It doesn't allow itself to being the most fluent toy, but whatever, you know. The transformation is inoffensive, it's not that difficult, so I'll give it a 3. Articulation on this guy feels a bit lacking, but I don't really expect something like this to be too dynamic, you know. I was originally kind of quite scathing with how I was kind of looking at this guy's articulation, with kind of the lack of posability, like with the thigh swivel, the arms not being able to go all the way around, and then this kind of head not having too much movement. And I just kind of forgive it a little bit due to the coolness of this design, you know. And like I said many times before, nobody buys Transformers for articulation, right? You know, you buy it for the experience of having something that goes back and forth between two modes. You know, it's essentially 2 toys in one. So articulation, you still go get 3 for it, because for this character, I think it's fine. And finally, value for money. value for money on this guy is quite decent, you know. It's definitely not the most amazing thing in the world, and I feel that having reviewed Cyclonus before this, it's kind of skewed my opinion on what a Voyager should be. Um, but you know, this is good. You get a nice gun, which is, it looks like fairly standard stuff, but you get a blast effect, which is pretty sweet. It can be used in the robot and vehicle modes, and yeah, you know, it's not terrible value for money. He's a fine size. Everything else about him's fine. You just get something really cool. The one problem with this guy's value for money is it's kind of not something other characters really suffer from, but you want to army build sweeps, right? There were a kind of an army of clones in G1. Good luck buying lots of these, because if you can't find them too cheap, that's going to be quite the expensive army to build. So, you know, value for money on this guy, just to cut it short, I'm going to say it's a solid 3.5 out of 5, because he doesn't do anything terribly, but it's just not the most fun experience in the world. But you get a blast accessory, and you get a figure that doesn't really do much wrong. So that's it, you know. I'm quite happy with kind of how this mold turned out, even though my version's QC is just awful. That could be a running thing, but I never looked into it too much, you know, because I'm not one for worrying about QC too much, you know. If a figure has certain little imperfections that are consistent across the board with every copy, whatever, you know. In this case, I had my own copy just kind of be on a bit of the poorer end. You know, I'll live with it. This has been AnimatedCHUG. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.